Khary Fraizer. Definitely, Detroit is different. Still here at the Just Leave conference, and we're talking New Detroit. And if we're talking New Detroit, we're definitely talking this man, Michael Rafferty. This is an idea and vision, as Marshall told me, that he had in his mind to bring about this conference. So let's start there. Why is it important? What was the concept of coming together with this conference? Why did you want to do this?
Oh man! Well, so when I came in, thank you. When I came in 2019, it was May 2019. It was about a year before. In fact, my first day was about a year to the day before George Floyd died, and about 9 months or so before the pandemic. And New Detroit's a legacy organization in this city that started after the rebellion in '67, and I was, thank you. I came in hoping to sort of take that legacy and that history and meet it with the needs that I saw more immediately around us, and some of the, I came from a background in a field of economic development, and we're always selling the region in economic development as one of the most innovative places in the country, if not the world. We put out more patents per capita than just about any place in the world. We graduate a whole bunch of engineers, and we've seen for a very long time that one of the biggest problems that we have in Detroit is racism, is culture clash. We can look at lots of numbers to prove that, but we weren't really applying the same level of innovation that we're so proud of to one of the biggest problems that we've got. And right after I started, or just before I started, we had something. It was an annual dinner that we've been having for years, and it's great for fellowship and great for fundraising and that sort of thing. But one thought occurred to me as I was looking out at all these people who committed themselves to coming out and celebrate the organization, that they weren't walking away with what I thought were the tools that were necessary to go out there and address this big problem. So, putting all those things together, the fact that we'd committed ourselves for years to putting together an annual event that put a lot of, there's a lot of person power into that, and we were capturing hundreds and hundreds of people for these events. We needed to make sure that they were mobilized and I hate to use this word, but weaponized, and going out and addressing racism. Now, the other part of that for me was Detroit has the potential of being the epicenter of race equity. It has the potential of being the epicenter of change. We've got a lot of stuff in our history that shows us that we do things well, and that we can do things better if we continue to focus on that growth and improvement. And I ultimately want to see this event be not just annual, but I want to see people from all over the world coming to Detroit saying, here's how we solve our problems around race.
And that's unique. And I have two more questions that just popped out from what you just shared. But before we even get to that, I definitely have to get to, as I've been stating, I've asked so many people about diversity, talked a little bit about equity, but the inclusiveness of this, that's really, I think, one of the harder obstacles, because it's changing the culture of certain spaces that have been white male dominated, or they're not ready and available for a person that's disabled, or people with different challenges, or a person that thinks just culturally different. How do you see tools from today and track to make sure that inclusiveness actually comes about in some of these organizations and businesses?
Well, I mean, I think one of the first tools that we need is, and we have a workshop going on upstairs right now, is sort of this the business case. I don't think. I don't think there's enough motivation to get all the organizations and institutions that are leading our economy to really like have a bottom line motivation to include, right?
Yeah.
And I really hate to say that, because I think here we are in 2022, the motivation it should be there. But even after we've gotten through 2020, when all the pledges were being made, by companies and industries, hey, we've got to do something now that,
Yeah.
the a lot of the corporations that I've spoken to since have said, well, our shareholders, are looking at anti-racism or looking at critical race theory as dog whistles, and so we kind of have to. So there's 2 steps up and a step back, and 2 steps up and a step back, and I think we heard Dr. Kendi and Jeffrey Robinson say today, what racism doesn't just hurt black and brown people. It hurts everybody.
Yeah.
When we get down to just the concept that the country is built on this concept of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I mean, the examples, the many, many, many examples that we've seen of racism challenge that. And the presence of racism and this pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness, it's paradoxical, right? And when you're looking at it on an organizational level, it's paradoxical to say that we're a good citizen. It's paradoxical to say that we are bottom line motivated and bottom line focused. It's paradoxical to say that we care about our consumers and not really focus on anti-racism. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you're not focusing on equity and inclusion and belonging and justice and and you can keep going, right? Then you're actually creating this paradox. There's there's a lot of data out there that talk about the business case for race equity, the business case for inclusion, and I believe it was McKinsey that put a report out probably 2-3 years ago, maybe 4 actually at this point, but it says that if we actually had true equity and inclusion, we would be adding $3 trillion annually to our to our GDP. Mm-hmm. Right? We would be adding more than $300 million annually to some Fortune 500 companies. The business case is there, but it's clear that the bias and the motivation haven't pushed it to the point where we see it the way that it needs to be seen. So, I'd say the first tool, is motivation. Another tool is you have to measure. And a third would be you have to constantly reinforce the point and make it part of your metrics. Make it part of your KPIs. Make it part of your bottom line conversation as an organization that equity and inclusion are necessary for this organization's health and survival and reputation.
And I definitely. You're giving so many gems into this. It was unique because during Kendi's presentation, I'm here and I'm sending out some other emails. In walked 2 gentlemen at a fire safety and engineering conference actually happening here, and they were like, "What's going on? What's going on? What's this?" And I was like, "Okay, this is a presentation from New Detroit, and these guys are from Colorado." So we're talking a little bit about that, and he was like, "Wow, some of this information may be valuable for us because it's nothing but white guys over here." So as you speak about that engineering, we speak about certain fields just traditionally have not been inclusive. Mm-hmm. And I was looking to explain to them, like, culturally to be inclusive so people understand, it's heightening the level of comfort too. We have a lot of definitely Islamic population in Detroit, stronger than a lot of other places in America, where it's like times for prayer and just knowing things like that. So it could be honoring things in religion. It could be honoring things like traditions. It could be so many different things being honored. But unless you have a lens into understanding, how do you understand something like that? So to hear you share that, and then also we see that these markets expand. And people buy. They want to support. They want to seek. So we think of like tools that they say are like online learning has been a heavy gateway to show so many businesses that all of these people that you excluded really want to learn. And it's been businesses that have revolutionized what online learning was within our lifetime. We look at things like the way money support is being sent through these different money apps and cash apps and Zelles and different options of the way money transfers happen in communities that have so many cases about banking being so racially biased. And now these banking options are looking to be like, wow, how do we get a market share of these other companies and these corporations?
Yeah.
Will it always take, people feeling as though they're behind the trend to actually catch up with the trend? And more so, I guess I would say, in reference to that, for all of those companies that aren't here, that aren't present, and up on the trend, what will be the catalyst? What do you see being the catalyst to get more people on this trend and understand that it is value in equity, diversity, and inclusion?
I think one thing that, so I'm actually taking a few pages out of the playbooks of our presenters before. There's an art of persuasion. I heard Jeffrey Robbins say that today. Don't be committed to the failure of having persuaded somebody. Don't be influenced by the failure of having persuaded somebody. Be committed to the art of persuasion. That stuck with me because in the first panel we also talked about policies and practices and procedures. We talk about that all the time. In fact, I would say the era before this era was civil rights, when it was let's change laws, and changing laws is really what's going to create the balance and equity, when that was certainly true to a point, but acknowledging that laws and policies and practices, they come from people, right? They come from the hearts and minds of people. And to get that all those necessary conversion rates, all those necessary conversions to happen, to have laws and change, and practices change so that the system changes, you have to consider the hearts and minds of all the people who, make the laws and break the laws, right?
Yeah.
Make the laws and need to be heavily regulated to make sure that, their hearts and if the practices will change, and the laws will change when the hearts and minds have changed.
Yeah.
And, as far as, the point of persuasion, we're not talking about, propaganda. We're talking about, did you know that black women die at a rate 2.5 or 3 times that of white women during childbirth? Mm-hmm. Did you know that when a black infant is seen by a white doctor, the rate of their death goes up by 3 times, right? At this point, we're talking about the most innocent of humanity. We're talking about our children. We're talking about their mothers, right? There's a moral imperative there. And then you go on the other side, and we're talking about the economy, and we're saying, there's a rising tide to ending racism, right? Your organization will actually do better if there is diversity, if there is inclusion of thought and inclusion, of presence in leadership and in boardrooms. The GDP will be better. If we're not spending so much money on incarceration, we will have more money to put into infrastructure. These aren't persuasive points, just for the sake of, me doing better and you, and certainly not you doing worse. This is an acknowledgement that this is good for all of us, right? When we get to that point, the value proposition is there.
I love it. And you definitely went right into your economic bag that I love as an economic guy, value proposition. And here's another economic term. It's not a zero-sum game.
Right.
I think that
Yes.
as Americans, we look through that lens just because we've been conditioned through capitalism to believe that, scarcity just exists all the time, as if like there won't be more space in these spaces. And what I do in content creation, this space has grown and it's going to continue to grow more and more and more and more. If I looked at it as if, oh man, you know what I'm saying, if somebody else gets here, they're going to take away what I'm doing. In actuality, it's the reverse. The more people that enter the